Yesterday, something happened in my session that completely changed how I think about rote learning. My 10-year-old client was confidently making the alphabet in clay, saying each letter perfectly until he reached the letter L. Then he stopped. He was confused and he said something that made my jaw drop. He told me he always learned his ABCs using the alphabet song, just like millions of children do. But when he got to L, instead of continuing with MNOP, he said Ella-Mella-Pe. And at the end of the alphabet, he said Y and Z. For 7 years, since kindergarten, he'd been faithfully memorising and repeating the alphabet, but he wasn't learning the letters. He was learning sounds that made no sense when they were separated from the melody. This is the hidden danger of rote learning that we rarely talk about. We assume that if a child can recite something, they understand it, and we celebrate their ability to regurgitate information and label them as clever. However, memorization does not guarantee understanding. We do this everywhere. From the moment our children are born, we repeat things over and over again, believing that repetition equates to learning. Children's programs build entire episodes around this concept. Classrooms rely on it, and parents use it instinctively. However, here's a critical point. Repetition is not helpful if you're repeating the same thing incorrectly over and over again. My client had spent 7 years reinforcing the wrong patterns. No wonder reading didn't make sense to him. How could it? His foundation, the alphabet, which letters and words for reading ultimately grow from, was built on misunderstood sounds rather than clear letter recognition. This wasn't a learning difficulty, and this wasn't lack of intelligence. This was the predictable result of rote learning without understanding. True learning happens when we build understanding from strong foundations. When we ensure each element is genuinely comprehended before moving to the next, and when we separate the melody from the meaning and make sure both are solid. However, here's what really matters. We need to find each learner's pathway to understanding. For my client, it wasn't auditory repetition. It was the tactile, three-dimensional experience of shaping each letter with his own hands that made the difference. Once we addressed the real issue, not his ability to learn, but what he had learned, everything changed, and then the magic happened. My client looked at the clay and said, "This might be my new way of learning." When he made the letters and models with clay, he could remember them. They made sense to him. The whole tactile experience, the three-dimensional form, suddenly the abstract became concrete in his mind. Then came the moment that gave me the chills. He was able to say the alphabet perfectly, with his eyes closed, both forward and backwards. This is the same child who, an hour earlier, couldn't get past Ella-Mella-Pe. The next time you hear a child recite something perfectly, ask yourself, do they understand what they're saying, or are they just really good at memorising sounds? Because the difference between the two might be the key to unlocking their potential. Sometimes the most important learning happens when we stop assuming that repetition means understanding and start building knowledge from a foundation that actually makes sense. If if this video resonated with you, please hit that like button, ring that bell, and please share it. I'd love to see you for the next video.